there's a low amount of confidence than usual in Georgia's ability to win a national championship. They're being doubted because there's not a lot of confidence in Gunner Stockton being good enough to get them back to another national championship. We haven't really seen too much of him. He played in a few quarters in the SEC title game. Then he started in that playoff loss to Notre Dame, which Georgia's offense couldn't get out the mud. And I mainly put that loss not on Gunner Stockton, but on the offensive line and the wide receivers. And Gunner Stockton, although he is unproven, he's not the only unproven quarterback in the SEC this year. There's a lower perception on him than what there is when it comes to guys like Arch Manning and Austin Simmons. We haven't seen too much of neither one of those dudes, but the perception on them is a lot higher because they're perceived as Lamborghinis and Corvettes. They're more flashier than what Gunner Stockton is. And it's hard to be attracted to something that isn't all that flashy. Although Gunner Stockton was a 4-star recruit coming out of high school, he's not as physically gifted as what Austin Simmons is, and he doesn't have the hype behind his last name like what Arch Manning does, which is why the confidence in Georgia is a lot lower than what we are normally accustomed to seeing out of a Kirby Smart coach team. But here's the thing. What everybody is getting wrong about Georgia this year is that there's this false belief that they need Gunner Stockton to be great when he doesn't need to be that. Kirby Smart has never won with great quarterback play. This is a guy who picked Jake Fromm over Justin Fields in spite of Justin Fields being the more physically gifted of the two. He won his first national championship with a walk-on, that being the myth, the man, the legend that is Sir Stetson Bennett. And he was a walk-on. And even then, when Stetson Bennett led Kirby to his first national title, there were people swearing up and down all throughout that season that he wasn't even the best quarterback on the roster. Some folks were waiting for JT Daniels to finally start again, and that moment never came. And after Georgia won their first title, it was said that Stetson Bennett, his first season as a starter was a fluke. He wouldn't be able to be that good again, and he ran it back. He was a contender for the Heisman Trophy, and Georgia ends up winning back-to-back national championships. What gets overlooked in this new age of college football, with all of the flash that there is coming in at quarterback, the last 3 national championship teams didn't have elite quarterback play. Will Howard was not elite. He was good, not great. The year before that, Michigan, they won with J.J. McCarthy being a handoff merchant that season. He barely threw the ball. Yeah, he got drafted in the first round, but there's a difference between having elite traits and having elite production. And J.J. McCarthy got drafted high because he had elite traits. As far as production goes, you could have put anybody on that Michigan team behind center, and they still could have had the same amount of success due to how dominant their rushing attack was. And that's what Georgia needs to get back to. They don't need Gunner Stockton to be this prolific quarterback. They don't need him to put that cape on and look like Lenore Sellers or DJ Lagway. What they need is for him to be functional enough to take advantage of a Georgia team that normally is always one of the most talented on the offensive side of football. What hurt Georgia last year is that they had injuries on the offensive line, and they didn't have that elite depth as what they've had in years past to make up for that. So the O-line production dropped, and that caused the ground game to not be as good as what it used to be. They were one of the worst teams in the SEC at running the football when there was a lot of hype about how good Georgia's rushing attack was going to be around this same time last season because they stole Trevor Etienne from Florida and he was banged up. He couldn't really stay healthy. Then you had a wide receiving core who couldn't catch a pass to save their life. And like my old high school coach used to tell me, if you can't catch the ball, you're playing the wrong position. You should be playing defensive back. When you lead the nation and drop passes, there's only so much Mike Bobo and the quarterback can do. Guys got to go out there and make plays, and that's something that Georgia's offense didn't do a lot of. And going into this season with Zachariah Branch and some other transfers coming in at wide receiver, you should see the production and the passing attack go back to what we've seen out of Georgia in years past. Is it going to be top 10 or top 5 in passing yards per game? No, but that's never what Georgia has been. Georgia has always been a team that has won playing complementary football, and that's what's going to make or break Georgia's ability to once again be a national contender. Can they be able to be balanced on offense? When you're asking your quarterback to go out there behind a banked up offensive line and carry you to a win, that's going to be a recipe for disaster. Kirby Smart is a simple man. He doesn't need a Lamborghini or Corvette to get to his preferred destination. All he needs is a car that can get him from point A to point B, that can be consistent, save good money on gas, and not break down on him in Georgia's most crucial games. And that's what Gunner Stockton is going to be able to do for Georgia this year. He's going to be solid and he's going to be consistent. You won't see a lot of turnovers out of him. He'll elevate your ground game because he's a better runner of the ball than what Carson Beck was. And you got a guy who's just more focused and locked in than what Beck was last season. I don't see Gunner Stockton as a liability for Georgia this year. And it's shocking to me that Georgia is seen so lowly this year when last year's team had just as many question marks before the season going in. I said that Georgia could possibly go 9-3, 10-2, and everybody called me a hater. They laughed at me, said I didn't know ball. But with the depth of the SEC right now, if you just have a rash of injuries like what Georgia did, that's enough to just completely make your season go left. And last season was Kirby Smart's best ever coaching job. He was able to win in spite of all of the limitations that Georgia had offensively, which further shows why he's the greatest coach in college football right now. And I don't expect that to change. Although Georgia still plays a relatively difficult schedule, so does everybody else in this conference. Gunner Stockton doesn't need to be great. He just needs to be solid. If he can be somewhat a better version of what Stetson Bennett was, that's good enough for Georgia to once again be in a national title conversation.